Hey guys, Hannah from Reality Awareness here. Welcome to my live stream. Welcome to my page. If this is the first time you've ever been here, comment below and let me know where you're from in the world. I was going to say in the universe. Hey, maybe let me know where you're from in the universe. Hey, like we could have some realm connections here, right? Let me know if you guys even know about realms. Like, do you know which realm you come from? Do you know which universe you come from? Do you know which planet you come from? I know it sounds very out there, but this is very normal for me. This is very normal for all of us here at Reality Awareness. So comment below, let me know which realm you're from, or which universe you're from even. Oh, that's funny. This topic of this live stream is the feminine betrayal, the backstabbing, the gossiping, being kicked out of groups, the abandonment, the ultimate feminine wounding is what I'm going to talk about on this live stream today. It is a follow-on from the live stream I did the other day. You don't necessarily need to watch the live stream I did the other day. It is, what did I do the other day? I feel betrayed by the dark. But this story is a little bit of a follow-on from then. So whilst I'm waiting for you guys to join, I'm going to share this live stream as I do. And I will bring the comments up here as well. Hello. Hello, hello. All right, just gonna bring this up. Remember how to do it. You're here, yay! Okay, it's taking me a moment. Interesting topic, this one. I had a little bit of a moment before I went live. I'm like, just go live, Hannah. I'm like, yeah, I'm actually a little bit nervous to talk about this topic, to be honest. But it was a really big shift that I had the week before, the week in between Christmas and New Year. It was actually a pretty dark week for me. It was, yeah, I was bleeding. So I was in my moon flow, deep in my moon flow. And, you know, that's a time when we release, right? And if we work these cycles, we realize there's nothing wrong with us and we actually heal faster, if that's even a thing. We shift faster and we get to come back to our joy and our light a lot faster if we actually work these cycles. So I've shared that now. Hello, everybody. Okay, for those of you who are not sure about their realm or which universe you're from, I might do a live stream at some point on that particular topic. Knowing which realm you come from is really awesome. So yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so I don't even know where to start with this live stream because I feel like there's a lot of new people here, so welcome. And you know, I was like contemplating before this live stream, I was like, how do I explain this without you guys knowing the full backstory of my journey of where I've come from? And I was like, I'm just going to start talking and trust that whatever pieces of my past need to be, you know, made aware of so that I can, you know, explain it. I think, you know, whatever. I'm just going to start talking and try and figure it out. Just talk. Just talk. So hello, yeah, I'm feeling a lot better. I'm physically still healing, of course. So yeah, and for those of you who are brand new on this live stream, I was attacked by 2 dogs beginning of December, broken finger, legs, puncture wounds, etc. So I'm just starting to feel better. Like physically, obviously still healing. Mentally, I feel good right this second, but I'm very conscious that every moon flow I have for a couple of months may bring it all up again. But again, that's where the healing happens, right? If you work your moon flow, your moon cycle, that 10 days before you bleed, it's such a potent time to release and shift and heal, right? Like tears actually release the stress hormone cortisol. It's important to let the tears flow, right? All right, so let's talk about this feminine wounding, this betrayal, the backstabbing, the wounding. So I'm just going to start with what really shifted for me. It was very potent, powerful. It was, what's the word? I want to say eye-opening, if you may. Of course, seeing new realities. So I was obviously, you know, in that space before I bleed. That 10 days before I bleed is like lookout time in a way, right? And it's like, obviously I was still healing. It was fresh, you know, it was the first moon flow from the dog attack as well. So I was in all the feelings. I wasn't able to write, type. Starting to realize that when you don't, you know, like this has been in this splint, right? And my fingers were starting to swell up. They were like very mobile, except for the little one, of course. And just having them swell up and stiffen. And I was like, how can I not move for the rest of my hand? Like, I was just distraught. I was like, how am I supposed to work? How am I supposed to, like, I was just a mess. I was a freaking mess, right? Hence why I came to that realization, or the idea dropped in, to share the best of the best blogs of all time that I've ever written throughout January for 2020, which is what I'm doing. So, you know, that dropped in, it sort of gave me a bit of peace, but then, you know, and I, you know, still trying to figure out how I function and how my limbs work again and all sorts of things. It was a very, very, it's definitely an experience. Yes, Lisa, that's right. You know, many, many reasons about it. I shared that mainly in the last live stream that I did. I feel betrayed by the dark. So I go into the, you know, hows and whys. And of course, that's not all the details there, but it's there. And so, you know, talking about the dark, you know, the dark is the feminine, right? If we look at the yin and the yang, the yin is the feminine, it's dark, it's cold, it's empty. The yang is the masculine, it's light, it's bright, it's warm, you know, amongst other traits. Like, that is the nature of the 3D reality we live in, right? And even though I might be female and there's a male, inside of us, we also have a male and a female. And that can, like, you know, like how deep do you want to go with that masculine and feminine balance within each person, you know? And then, like, it reflects out in our, you know, universe, in our world and our reality, right? So anyway, so back to the story. You know, I was like just starting to function or figuring out. I was a mess. I was actually a freaking mess. Just ask a few people that I connected with. I'm like, I was just a mess, but I was also conscious it was just coming out, right? It's healing, and I really allow those messes because it's actually healing. It's healing something, right? And when we know how to support ourselves, when we have the right support around us who also understand that, it helps things shift fast. And it's not about fast, but we don't get stuck in it, right? And we're able to heal and come back to life, you know, after these experiences, for example. So anyway, I was, you know, in that space, and then I got really triggered as well by, you know, we look on social media, we do our thing, right? And even if I'm not even trying to look, like, I got so triggered by this woman. And it's not new for me to get triggered by this particular woman. But, you know, it was like I was in that space and it just dropped in even more. Like, it was just something she wrote in a post. Like, you know, like I just, you know, and it just all compounded. And I was just like, I was already a mess, but it just kind of compounded again. And I was like, why do I get so triggered by this woman? Like, why? And I was just like crying, asking this question. I was like, what is this? Like, the trigger is always so strong. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, and I'm a crying emotional mess at the same time, right? I'm all good right now. But, so, you know, when, you know, I was like crying and in that space, like, it was almost like I just dropped through the layers. And this is the power of understanding not just the flow and the cycle in your 10 days before you know, bleed, especially. It's very powerful to understand your cycle and work with it, right? And in that time, giving yourself more time and space to heal, to have time off, to do blah, 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 blah. Be more gentle with yourself, etc. And when you cry, right, when a person cries and they get comfortable, because if you're not used to crying, which society is taught that it's not okay, hence the many problems we see in society. I'm like, if everyone had a fucking big cry, they would not be like this, right? I'm a big believer in that. You know, not just a cry about all the issues in their life that I've ever gone through, right? Because how many times do we get told to stop it, or, you know, especially as a child, and we grow up like that and we wonder why we have addictions and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, don't get me started. But it's important, right? And so when we cry, right, the first time we cry, if you're new to this, I'll just explain this part. The first time you allow yourself to cry, you might cry for a minute and then you'll zip it up. Like, it'll just stop. And you'll be like, I try. Even if you watch a sad movie, maybe that gets the tears flowing, or music that you know makes you cry, that gets the tears flowing. Like, they're good tools, right? But when we cry, there's certain like sort of different layers. There'll be like a little surface cry, or and then there's like the bigger cries where our eyes go red, and then there's the bigger cries when we're like on the kitchen floor curled up in the fetus position, or in our bed just and that one where we can't take that. I call that the piercing the veils grief. That's the grief you want to get to. That's the grief you want to get comfortable with. Now it might take a few cries before you hit that deep grief. That is like the most healing thing in the world. It feels like you're never going to come out of it, right? And the thing is when you allow yourself to start crying, it's really important to understand that there might be a backlog for you. If you haven't done this before, there might be a backlog, okay? And over the years, and working with many clients over the years, I've noticed this pattern. There's this 18-month healing cycle, and at 18 months of like solid crying. Now I don't mean like crying every day, but it can feel like that, right? For a good 18 months. Now I'm giving you this heads up because if you haven't done this before and you're starting to do this, or you're allowing yourself to cry, right? Remember, tears release the hormone cortisol. The hormone cortisol, it releases stress from the body. Just like going to the toilet, just like sweating, tears release cortisol. That's the stress. It's cortisol running through our brain because we're in flight or fight and going crazy because look at the freaking world. Like, it's like having a big cry. We all know how powerful having a huge cry feels like it's never going to end, but afterwards we feel better. We're more at peace. There's studies done that the brain waves actually change to like that of a meditating Zen monk if you can be listened to empathetically, compassionately. I was trying to say them both in the same word. To have someone listen without trying to fix you, just listening and just being there with you is like, that's like the ultimate. If you don't have that level of support, allowing yourself to cry is definitely good, especially when you're witnessing yourself crying, knowing what I'm teaching you right now, and knowing that you're healing rather than like, what's wrong with me? I need to stop crying too, right? When you can change the fact that you're witnessing yourself crying as well, that can be healing, but the most healing is having someone there. Not all of us have got that, right? So I will speak to these comments soon that you're putting in there. I see you. And so allowing yourself to cry really gives you that space to heal, okay? Now, the reason I'm explaining this is because it's important to understand how I dropped into this understanding of this feminine betrayal and this trigger that I've had with this woman for like years, and it just drives me insane, right? It's like every time I just lose my shit about it. And when I'm triggered in that space, yeah? And so when we allow ourselves to understand these cries, right? And we like I said, if you start this healing process of allowing yourself to cry, in your mind, know that for the next 18 months, you might be going through that, okay? Now, again, if you follow the cycles, and even if you're a man, you also have cycles. Men need to retreat. Men need man caves. Men need time out. Men need to go hunting with the boys, like the men, whatever. It's like, you also have cycles, okay? It's not just women that has cycles. Men and women have cycles, okay? We both have a sacral chakra. That's where the cycles happen. That's where the womb is, right? We both have that sacral chakra energy center. We're built differently, right? But we're also the same. So when you understand your own cycles, right? And I, if you track them on a calendar or track them, like be conscious of them, right? Be conscious of your menstrual cycle, be conscious of the cycles in the family, and the household can like change the entire household of an entire family when you're supporting each other in these cycles, right? So, using that time, and when you start this healing journey through crying, right? Give yourself 18 months. In your head, know that for 18 months, I might be crying deeply, like howling, piercing the veils grief every single moon flow that I have for the next 18 months. Right? Or you might feel depressed for 18 months while you're going through this grieving cycle. Like it feels like depression, but you're crying and you're grieving, and just like life is like, what's the point? Like, but you're healing, okay? Give yourself 18 months. I know it sounds like a long time, but when we can, and so to put it into perspective, right? Say if you're picking a figure out of the air, right? Say if you're 50 years old, okay? And you're just starting to understand this stuff, okay? And you start crying for like, you start this crying thing and you do it for like a month, 2 months or 3 months, and you're like, wow, what's going on? I don't know what's happening. You know, like, is there something wrong with me? Like, if you look at 18 months compared to 50 years, that ratio is like tiny. 18 months for 50 years is tiny. Okay, especially if you haven't done any of this work before, right? And especially if you haven't, maybe you've done personal development work, spiritual meditation work, okay, but you actually haven't allowed yourself to cry. That's a whole nother level of healing that comes in. Do you know what that's doing? It's cracking you open for your heart. It's getting you out of your head and into your heart and learning to feel, maybe for the very first time. It's not easy. This is deeply enabling us to come into our heart space, to not get triggered and react so much. It helps shift things, right? It gets us out of our head into our heart. So I just wanted to share that little bit of backstory. And I just see Mel's comment. She says, I dropped 4 times yesterday crying, cleaning my home. Felt so good afterwards. Today was an amazing day. Exactly. So when we allow ourselves these times, and sometimes when we're cleaning, right, physically cleaning, it can bring on the cries because we're also moving the energy and crap out of the house. And I really just want to point that out because, and especially, you know, when I thought you said you dropped something and broke it and you started crying. So there's a thing called like the broken cookie syndrome, or the broken cookie scenario, right? Where, like, you know, for example, if I'm in the kitchen and I'm sort of like, know I'm on edge, you know, sort of thing, and I got feelings bubbling up, you know, and I'll be doing the dishes or putting away. This is actually what happened in that week, actually, that I'm about to tell you about this trigger. You know, and I was like in the kitchen and I was, you know, one-handed, so I've got, you know, one glove on and I'm putting stuff in the dishwasher, and it just like the glass slipped out of my hand because I wear gloves in the kitchen so I can protect my nails. And so like, and I put in the dishwasher, but instead it slipped out of my hand, out of the glove, and you know, and it smashed everywhere, of course, and I was just like I just screamed and I just like broke down crying. Like, you know, it's like the broken glass, the broken cookies, and it's like the trigger point, if you may, you know what I mean? And there's lots of different scenarios that can happen like that. Sometimes we're not feeling much, but then we'll fall over and hurt ourselves, and then we'll be bawling our eyes out crying, right? Like, and even this is so important to understand for children as well. Like, they'll be fine, see me running around, and then they'll hurt themselves even just a little bit, and then the cry is like ridiculously over the top. You have to remember there's a backlog there. There's a backlog, and they're not actually crying about, I'm not crying about the fucking glass that I smashed on the ground. I am, because I'm pissed off that happened, and then everything else comes out as well, right? This is so important to understand. Okay, so, all right, so I had to explain that bit, the cycles of healing, understanding tears, emotions, and the way we can work with this, okay? So I was already emotional that week. You know, like I said, it was the first bleed after this had happened. You know, I was figuring out, like, my hands getting worse because these fingers are starting to stiffen up as well, and I'm just like, oh my God, like, you know, it's all that sort of thing. And then I got triggered, and I was like dropping into the cry. I was just like, why? Like the anger. So Rachel just said, I'll cry if I'm feeling really angry. Under all anger is sadness. Look at the current state of the world. Under the anger is sadness. There's different layers of emotions, okay? Like there's a vibrational scale. There's also different layers of emotions on a scale, right? Very similar, I guess, if you look at it. Under all anger is sadness. Anger is like the protection mechanism. I'm going to talk about this as well right here. Under all anger is sadness. I want to say anger could be seen as a masculine trait. Sadness could be seen as a feminine trait. Talking about feminine betrayal stuff here. So I'm going to start pointing these to these emotions. Anger, masculine, even though it can be both, right? Grief is, sadness is feminine in a way, okay? There's no like, oh, it's also that. Like, I get it, right? I'm just giving you these explanations here. So when we understand anger as well, right? Like I was angry in the kitchen, like maybe, or like, I think I was actually, and then the glass slipped out and I was just like, oh, and then like it just started, right? It's like, you know, and so again, this is like so important to remember, like if we're conscious and we also know what's going on in the world or with children or anybody, right? This is not about tolerating abuse, okay? But this is when a child or a toddler is angry and frustrated and we're like, stop doing that, or why are you screaming, or it's fine, don't worry about it. Like, you know, no, they're angry, and under there is a kettle about to boil and all this grief needs to come out, right? The backlog, you have to remember the backlog. So for those of you who are just joining live, what I'm explaining here might not make sense, but you can watch the replay afterwards and understand what I'm sharing here as well, right? And so I got really angry when I got triggered. Yeah, I was just like, why does this woman trigger the hell out of me? And, you know, and then it was like instant dropped into this like sadness, you know, it was just like this sadness, but do you know what? It was almost like immediately, it wasn't even about her, which all triggers are, right? It was not about the actual thing. It's like the broken glass. It's not actually her. Like, look, it's not actually her. It's not actually the broken glass. If I put this finger back, I also have 3 fingers already pointing back at me. This is about me, right? 3 fingers, like them, it's you, right? Whatever you're triggered about, actually, it's good to catch this when you know you're judging or there's something going on. It's like, hang on a sec, let's pull the trigger back on myself. What actually is going on here, right? So, you know, and I was like, why do I get so angry about this? What is going on? Before I continue that bit of the story, beforehand, right? So this is like between Christmas and New Year. I'm recovering from this. I'm still recovering, you know, with the dog attack. And that month, like, you know, I couldn't do anything. Like, I was in hospital for 5 days. Then after surgery, I came home. I couldn't do anything, which is like, you have to do things as a single mum at home after you've had surgery, whether the doctor tells you to or not. Like, you kind of have to do things, right? So I'm like in so much pain, just, you know, it's just whatever. I've never been like that. I'm a strong, independent woman, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, it's like not being able to do what I did broke me, if you may. Yeah, it broke me. But even before it broke me, you know, because obviously I was sharing my story online and everything for you guys, and you know, so many people would message or comment and they're like, you're strong, I know you to be so strong, you'll get through this. And I'm like, of course I will. Like, I knew that. But when I just come out of surgery and the whole experience, I'm like, that's not what I want to hear right now. Even though like it was kind of them, like, please don't get me wrong. But the strong, like, you know, and do you know what I kept replying? In a way, it was just like, and I'm crying and whatever and healing and not being able to move and the whole freaking thing, right? Knowing that tears heal, I'll let myself drop right into it. I wouldn't be feeling like this right now, that's soon after. Yeah. And I would reply back to them and I'd say, I don't want to be strong anymore. I'm tired of being strong. That's what I used to say. That's what I was saying. I'm tired of being strong. I'm tired of being strong. And I'm crying and I can't move. And you know, and when the actual dog attack happened, without going into it too much, although you can find it if you scroll down my page back to the 7th of December, I shared more details there. In the midst of it, after I was fighting and trying to get them off me, I surrendered. Like, I physically couldn't do anything when I was being pulled in tug of war. And I've never felt my body go limp like that in surrender. It was a feeling I will never forget. And I don't do words for the year. I don't. And, but the word, I was like, maybe my word for this year is actually surrender, because it's continued on. I can't lift that thing. I can't clean the pool. I can't take the rubber. Like, I was just like, surrender. You know, like so many things, right? That feeling of surrender was also that it was almost like a softening. It was like, I don't want to be strong anymore. It's not that I can't be, but I'm tired of being the strong, independent woman. Now, what I'm about to share next, you may need to know a little bit of my backstory from the past few years, but if you've been following me for the past 12 months, I have been talking about my realizations and breakout of my masculine energy. So I'm a strong, independent woman, but I'm very my masculine energy, even though people are like, oh, you got a very strong feminine energy. I'm like, I don't feel it, right? I've been a single mom for 13 years. I've had to do everything, blah, 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 blah. I've built my business, blah, blah, blah. I've created a lot. I've done a lot. Like, I'm very proud and I love my masculine self, because I wouldn't be where I am today now. But over the past 12 months especially, I've been like really conscious of understanding and letting go of, what is it? My whole life, I've been running from abuse. I left home when I was 18. I drove across Australia. I landed here. I've been in a series of abusive relationships. I've learned a lot, okay? The past perhaps almost 4 to 5 years, I've been really working on that, like diligently, consciously, lots of mentors, lots of counseling, blah, 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 you name it. Like I said, if you've been following me over the past few years, you know, but for those of you who are new here, I'm just giving you a little bit of backstory. So over this past 12 months especially, what I realized is that I've been running from abuse, running from trauma, running on fear of adrenaline. So when somebody's in trauma, it's like the fear and adrenaline, right? Now for me, that's never really turned off, and I didn't know this. Yeah, so I've always had to hold it together. I've been on my own for a long time. Left home when I was 18. All my family's interstate. It's, you know what I mean? Like, it's like I've had to wear this masculine shell, if you may, this protection shell, which the masculine is the protector. Okay, let's get this clear here. This is not a blaming of anything. This is an understanding of the energetics of the masculine and feminine self, and how they can become those hard walls, how we can be isolating and feel alone for the rest of our life, or be in a relationship and feel alone even, because we've got this hard masculine outer shell, and that is actually protecting. What's it protecting, guys? What's it protecting? It's protecting the hard outer masculine shell is protecting. Just give you a moment. I know it's a bit of a delay. Janelle says the heart. Betty says me. Yep. Yep, you. It's protecting ourselves for sure. Yeah. What else is it? What is it protecting? Let's say if it's like out of balance, right? If the masculine and feminine self is out of balance, what is that outer masculine shell? Especially if you're feminine, but it can happen, right? You know, for opposite genders, like switch it around if you may. Deanne got it. Soft inner feminine. Exactly that. Right? So when we get hit or whatever trauma happens, I mean, the heart can be the feminine for sure, right? But it's the soft inner feminine. It's that passion, that sensuality, that femininity. And lo and behold, why do I get so triggered? Because that woman is reflecting to me that powerful, very powerful, soft, inner feminine, just inner power, sensuality, her demeanor, her whole sense of self. It's that soft, inner feminine that gets shut down, shut away, hurt, abandoned, right? Now, the outer masculine is strong. There's a lot of strong women out there. There's a lot of strong women out there, right? And we've had to be. We've been hurt. We're freaking doing that again. And usually when we're in that state, we attract a lot of men who need mothering. Yeah, trust me, I know this stuff inside out. Yeah. So I've been conscious of this as well, right? Especially over the past 2 years, and I've really been working on it. And I'm like, how do I stop attracting these feminine men that need like a mother? Like, I knew it was me, right? And it's like really looking at that. I was like, I don't want to do that anymore, blah, blah, blah. I also got clear that I do want a conscious man as well. I was just like, I'm not settling, you know. I was like, I tried it and I've tried it again and again. I'm like, nah, I just can't, you know. And so I've really been working on that, right? So when this trigger happened, yeah, and it pushes people away, yeah. So when we look at the title of this live stream, if I just bring it up, because I can't see it at the top there, and it's important that I voice this for this next piece. Feminine betrayal, backstabbing, gossiping, kicked out of groups, and abandonment. So who knows when, you know, this outer masculine became my, you know, demeanor. Like, and Nicole said, so she just hit it on the head too. I see all your comments, but there's some that I'll just speak to while I'm, because you're nailing it, guys. Nicole says, I didn't have a motherly mother. This is where all my masculine energy comes from, the protector. Boom. Not just that, but then also the hurt and betrayal. I sort of guess that's the sort of core wounding layer, if you may. And then it's like, as I call it, it's like energetic scar layers on top of that, yeah, energetic scar layers that come on top of that, yeah. And so when we look at that, when we look at the layers, what I mean by that is this is where the protection layer, the protection layer, the protection layer, the protection layer, because we go through these experiences, and if we don't know how to heal from them in the moment, which when we're a child, there's a lot there, because do we have conscious parents around to really help us in that moment? Yeah, most of us don't. Like, I think we're becoming conscious parents to allow that generation to shift, definitely. But most of us didn't at this day and age. And so we're like healing from that. And then it's also healing through the scar tissue layers that go right down to the core, because we've had bad relationship after bad relationship after bad relationship. Hey, maybe they weren't bad, but I'm just saying there's hurts and wounding there, right? And it doesn't have to be intimate relationship, could be a friendship, could be career friendship, could be whatever, right? So when we look at that, I've been running on that, and the past 2 years, and especially being out here in this house and on this property, the isolation and the abandonment was just like in my face. I didn't have any distractions. I didn't have the beach to nurture me, which I realize is such a mothering thing for me, right? I didn't have, like, there's the cows. I don't have people around. Like, I'm talking to cows. Like, the past 12 months have been going insane, right? But I'm also conscious that I've been facing this, the depth of it, right? So when I got triggered by this woman and I, dropped down through the layers and it hit me, it was like, I realized it wasn't about her, even though before I never had the space or whatever it was, I never dropped through the layers like that all the times I've been triggered by it. And so when I dropped into it, it was, and I want to point this out, like, this is like 12 to 18 months, 18-month healing cycle where I've really been working on releasing this outer masculine shell. I was conscious of that masculine. I was conscious of me attracting men that needed a mother. I was conscious of attracting, rather than an equal. I was conscious of like, okay, well, I understand that. Well, how do I change that? And so this outer masculine shell had been dissolving, and over these periods of time, over the past 18 months, I'd been showing all these things, like, all these pieces of the puzzle. Like, as I always say, it takes time. We heal, we drop into stuff, we move stuff, we whatever. And then so, when it really, and then over the past 12 months, like I said, I realized that I've been running on adrenaline my whole freaking life, right? I've been like running on adrenaline, go, go, go. Like, yeah, I get a lot of stuff done and it's very powerful and there's nothing wrong with it. But I got tired of it. Like, it burnt me out. It was attracting the wrong relationships. Well, it wasn't wrong. I just didn't want that. It didn't resonate with my heart, right? And so when I look at that, the running on adrenaline, I was just like, wow. And the biggest part I realized, it's like, I don't need to run anymore. I am not in danger anymore. I'm safe now. I don't need to run anymore. Like, that was the biggest, like, wow. I'm out here in this house. Like, apart from the isolation and the bad stuff, I was like, I feel safe. I'm not running from a relationship. Like, when I, to give you a little bit of insight, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was in court with domestic violence orders and all that sort of thing while she was in my belly. Like, I've been running a lot for my freaking safety and for my life in a way. Like, I didn't realize, because that's just how it's been. I've just had to do it. And then being out here, it really got to a point where I realized I don't need to run anymore. I'm safe now. And that was like the start of the softening and the, wow, I don't need to run. I feel safe. And it is exhausting. Yeah, it's exhausting having that protection. And I wonder, this is just what's dropping in. I wonder if the exhaustion starts to kick in when we're in a place where we don't need to run anymore, where we don't need to, not feel safe anymore. Yeah, you can breathe. Yeah. And so that had been happening over the past 12 months. Now, back to between Christmas and New Year, and I dropped into that trigger, right? So this is another like 6 months away, of like that realization of like, wow, I'm safe now and I don't need to run. So when I'm dropping into the tears and the layers, like I've been speaking in this crop of grief, because you can drop through deeper layers of grief too. So like I said, if you just join live, if you watch the replay, you'll understand the grief that I'm talking about. It's different layers to it. And when we're crying, we can really let ourselves drop into different layers of grief as well, right? You'll feel it and you'll start to recognize it the more you do it and play around with that concept, right? So when when I was dropping into the tears, like it was like such an experience. It was almost like I dropped into my inner feminine, right? The past month of all of this, people were like, you're so strong, you'll get through this. And like, it was like helpful. I'm like, I know that, but I'm fucking tired of being strong. I don't want to be strong anymore, is what I kept saying to them. And it was like, and that was coming from my inner feminine. I was like, this is like, and when I was crying and dropped in after the trigger, it was just like, I felt like that was my feminine, because out here, it was like I could see and feel the outer masculine, like the masculine shell, if you may. It was like, you don't need to protect me anymore. It's like, you don't need to, hold that wall up, because by the way, while there is that wall of the hard outer shell masculine protector that served us until this moment, it's isolating. Not only do we shut off our heart and anything else that comes in, right, we're also like, we're blocking out we're blocking out the hurt or any future hurt that could come in, but we're also blocking out love. Like it's isolating. It's very isolating having that hard masculine shell up. You can't even let anything in. If you have trouble manifesting or receiving or anything, you want to start there. Yeah, you start with the masculine, start with that outer protector shell that you've been sitting with, because there's a big chunk of it there, right? And so when I was like crying, and it was almost like the outer masculine shell dissolved. Now it's not like it disappeared, but it definitely dissolved. And it's like, I want to say it's in balance now. It doesn't need to be in that extreme, there's a not enough and too much. And then there's a balance where they both balance and work, right? It's a different, it's safe for me to be in my inner feminine. It's safe for me to be in my femininity. It's safe for me to be. Like, that was huge. And so, in those moments when I was in that space realizing, right, I had all these flashbacks come back, right? I was in my inner feminine, this softening, this like almost like a reclaiming of her, with my outer masculine shell dissolving. Sorry, just had a call come through. I had all these as the outer masculine shell was dissolving, I had all these flashbacks. The feminine betrayal, the backstabbing, the gossiping, the kicked out of the groups, the abandonment, all those things that I've felt out of all these experiences over my entire life, and especially the last 10 years of single mumming and trying to fit in or, find my tribe, right? It was like the thing, it's just hard to describe, right? So if you can imagine the outer shell masculine dissolving, me and my tears I'm in my feminine now. Like, this is who I am, if that makes sense. It was like not my masculine. It was like there, and these flashbacks, and it was almost like all those experiences that I had with all the groups, right? And especially the past 10 years of being on the coast, and if you know my backstory, you would have heard about them. And it's like all these flashbacks of all those experiences. It was almost like they were out on the outer skirts of the masculine as well, and they were dissolving, because it wasn't even about that. It was about the abandonment of my own feminine. It was the abandonment of my own mothering. It was the abandonment of my own self. It was almost like with the outer masculine out there, it was a disconnect. It was a disconnect from my true self. It was a disconnect from who I am. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to describe it. So instead of it being like together and working together as a team energetically, right? It was like such a disconnect. And the tears that flooded me was about how disconnected I'd been from my true self, how disconnected I'd been from myself, because the outer masculine had been protecting me, right? And all those experiences out there, but it had also disconnected me from my true self. Now, no wonder I was experiencing all those things, especially over the last 10 years, because that was my energy. Like, we know this stuff, right? We know this, but I hope you're really understanding manifesting now on such a deep level, right? That was my experience, and you can see it. It's like I'm holding, like, this is what it felt like. It's like, don't fucking come near me and don't hurt me, because I'll hurt you back. And, I'm not going to be my true self. Like, tricky to describe, right? But all the feminine betrayal, backstabbing, gossiping was about my own self. I know it makes so much sense, and I feel like I'm not like dropping to the depth of it. I know there's some of you that said you understand. It makes total sense, right? And okay, you guys get it. Awesome, because trigger to describe, right? So, okay. So, and Nicole says we are all forced to face our inner feminine. We have to face duality, shadow work, next level. Yeah, and this is the thing, right? All of this is coming, as I said in the last live stream the other day, that I feel betrayed by the dark. I'm like, we just finished ear chakra consciousness in Transcendence Reality Society in November. And in, you know, and oh my God, suppose we were going to start throat chakra consciousness, can't even speak at the throat. We were going to start the throat chakra consciousness in December. So, because I'm working through and creating a whole course, we're going through the journey, you know, and then this happened. And then, you know, if you watch that, I feel betrayed by the dark, you'll also understand depth of what I'm talking here too. It is a part 2, really, this live stream. You know, and it's like, this is all next level advanced stuff. Like the stuff that I teach in Transcendence Reality Society is advanced consciousness. That's what it is. Advanced chakra consciousness. And this experience, like this is, and as you said, like Nicole, it's like facing our inner feminine, like the face of duality. It's like I want to say it's the inner, what it feels like to me is the shadow of the feminine, if you may. That's what it feels like, you know, and that's what's shifting. It's not being suppressed anymore. It's like allowing her to have the light, if you may, not being like pushed down into the dark and suppressed, you know. Okay, there was something else I wanted to talk about. Feminine betrayal, backstabbing, gossiping, kicked out, the abandonment. Kind of feels complete, but I felt there was another little piece to that. Thanks so much, guys. I see you guys joining live. I'm just going to scroll through the comments. Yeah, so you've been, because I just feel like there's another piece, but I can't, it was right there, but I'll just read through the comments. It might jog me for this last little piece. It is very isolating. Yes, been out of balance for a long time. It's getting better with realization of what you're talking about. Yeah, honestly, like this is like, you know, we don't, and sometimes we know, like I said, over the past 18 months, I'm like, I'm still attracting these men who are in their feminine. I'm obviously in my masculine to be attracting that, you know, like, what do I do about that? Like, come on, you know, and then like, it's probably about 5 or 6 months later, it dropped in, you know, it was do the work, blah, 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 and everything shifts or whatever. You know, and it's like, it was like, oh, I've been running on adrenaline and I'm in this protector mode and I'm safe now. Like, it was such like, you know, and it's just this softening and this feeling safe to being in that. But it's like, it takes time, right? You know, when you commit to changing something, or if you have a big life change, give yourself 18 months. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, give yourself time when you're working on something. You know, there is instant healing, there is instant shifts, but usually there's a big chunk of work that's been done before then, you know, like never forget that, right? You're in tears, awesome. The softening, yes. So yeah, Nicole says, when I broke my ankle, it was the first time in 7 years I've been with my husband. He saw the real me. Interesting, right? We wear these masks, these shells, you know, we're just attracting shells of each other. It's like, let's get real, you know. I was hysterically crying, like raw, real ugly, crying, completely vulnerable. I've never given up my power in front of everyone. And it's interesting that you think that that's giving up your power, right? It's giving up our power only because we feel that the masculine is our power, but the feminine is our power. There is, this dropped in before, I'm not affiliated with this account in any way, shape or form, but I friggin' love it. It's confronting to me at times, and I continue to follow it and watch it because I know it's confronting, because we're talking about the shadow of the feminine. Like, you know, we're talking about the dark, you know, the dark is the feminine, right? And oh my gosh, okay, I knew there was another piece, right? So coming off the I feel betrayed by the dark, that live stream I did a couple of days ago, part 1, is being like, from that live stream, it's like the dark, I feel betrayed by the dark. I feel betrayed by the dark. There it is again. Actually, it's the betrayal of my own self. Now, is that like me beating up on myself then and being hard? Well, like, oh, Hannah, you betrayed yourself. Like, for fuck's sake, get your shit together. Like, we don't want to go into that space, right? Because what you're doing when you're doing that is you're berating that little girl or boy inside of you from your childhood, right? That had to do that to freaking survive, remember? Remember, the fear kicked in, and that's what you did to survive, because you had maybe unconscious parents. It's very common. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a reality, right? There's nothing, no blame here. But don't go beating up on yourself because you're beating up on your own little girl or boy inside of yourself, right? So it's like, you know, when we look at what our true power is, yeah, there's a lot of us that are scared of that. We only need to relay everything that I've been talking about on this live stream and the previous live stream, I Feel Betrayed by the Dark, to the current world situation. And we can see why people are scared of standing up to their truth, because so many people are walking around with this shell. So many people walking around with this mask and the shell. So when we all start shifting and softening from the shell and reclaiming our true power, we feel more at peace. We don't have these reactions, the bouncing off each other for a start, right? And we remember that when we're doing this, we're actually pointing these 3 fingers back at ourselves. We're like, you did this. Actually, what's coming up for me? It's not always easy to face. There is definitely a readiness to face that stuff. So if I'm feeling betrayed by the dark, I'm also feeling betrayed. Like, there's a very deep level there. I'm feeling betrayed by my own inner feminine, right? But is that her fault? Is it my fault? Is it my inner child's fault? Is it my parents' fault? No, none of that. It's just we start to unlock all these layers to heal that. It's pretty deep. You guys with me? Are you still with me? It's pretty deep. That is pretty deep. Yeah. It's exhausting being so strong. It is. Yeah. And we don't need to do that anymore. Yeah. No friend request, guys. I wouldn't, like, if you do that, it's a scam. You guys come to me. You guys message me. I will never message you out of the blue. I will never friend request you. I'm happy if you guys want to friend request me. Send me a message. Let me know it's you so I can accept you. But I will never come to you guys. Just please know that. Like, you just, you know, and don't even worry about reporting them. Facebook doesn't recognize it. I don't even want to go into that. It's a whole nother story. It's bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Just block and delete. Just ignore it. It's not me. Okay. They'll ask you for credit card details. They'll ask you for, I'll give you a free reading, or you're cursed, or blah, 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 blah. Like, just block and delete. Facebook doesn't even acknowledge it. So just ignore it. Don't give it the time and energy. You got better things to do, like reclaiming your feminine, right? So yes. All right. Just scrolling through these comments. The surrender. Yeah, you can breathe and surrender. And what does that do? What does that do? Oh, just lets in all the manifestations of your heart. So at the ear chakra consciousness, we're opening to the divine feminine. At the ear chakra consciousness, we're opening. It's a softening, right? We're realizing there's more. There's a balance. Look, there's 2. By the way, when I teach the chakras, I come down. Crown, third eye, ears, throat, heart, solar plexus, sacral, and base. I include the ears. It's missing. It's the feminine. You can understand our current society is cut off from the feminine. It's like gone into the deep unconscious thing, which I was showing you that account. The wild divine feminine, right? This account, it's confronting for me at times, like, you know, but it's so true. This is the divine feminine that has been suppressed. And, you know, like this, for example, hell and heaven and good and evil were invented by the left brain patriarchal culture in the era of the goddess. Worshipping the underworld was not a place of punishment, but a place of purification, healing, rebirth, preparation for rebirth. The dark was not evil, but part of our cyclic nature. And then look at the image to go with it. Like, that is just an example, you know, like, yeah, got it? It's amazing, right? So, like I said, I'm not affiliated, just triggers me at times, and I've been working on it. So yes, we are the generation that heals the future generations. That's right, Nicole, definitely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, overworking, keeping busy constantly is a trauma response, is a protection response. This is such an important point. So, you know, at the start of this live stream, and I was talking about society has been trained to suppress feelings. Feelings is our heart. Feelings and is intuition, is the emotion, right? Overworking, keeping busy constantly is a trauma response, a protection response. It's also a way to suppress feelings, right? And this is why inner child healing is so powerful and needed and important when you're a baby, right? And it's like crying, shh, shaking, like, dude, it's okay, pushing the pram, driving the car, it's okay. Here, like, hang on, I don't have keys, like, rattle the keys, like, look at the birdie, distraction, movement, here's a dummy, here, have some food. Like, what is all this? Addictions, like movement, keeping overworking, constantly busy, I don't know, sex addiction, drinking, smoking, whatever it is, like, that is a suppression of feelings. That's why I say, if you've got an addiction, don't focus on the addiction, focus on the feelings underneath, and the addiction will lift by itself at the correct time when you've healed the core of it. Yeah. Very important to understand when you're like, gotta keep busy, gotta clean the house, like, it's just like your feelings are bubbling up. Yeah. Yep. So Dan says, I'm guilty of lashing out, or when I'm hurt or feeling abandoned. Yeah, and there's so much that I could go into this. I've got to jump off this because I've got a call with a client that it's been coming up, and maybe it's like a part 3 of this, because it's been a very interesting big shift for me, and I've decided I will do a part 3 of this live stream series. I didn't know I was doing one, but hey, when you turn up, and that's what happens. Because just what you said then, I really honor your honesty, and proud of you for acknowledging that, Dan, because, you know, like, and I am too, definitely. I'm guilty of lashing out when I'm hurt or feeling abandoned. It was that 5-year relationship that I went through, you know, back from 2013 it was, and the first 2 years were that. I was just like, you know, like, just in that, you know, lashing out. I was unconscious in that relationship for sure, right? You know, and it woke me up. That relationship really woke me up. He was like, it's all you, it's your problems, it's your blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know, I took that on board, and I did like 3 years of solid counseling, like mentors, like just consistently, because I was like, okay, you know, like, obviously there's something to this, you know, and it really changed me. And I was like, solid counseling, like, and a spiritual counselor. I'm losing my voice because I've been talking a lot. So, you know, it's like, and that, you know, when we know that there's, you know, definitely takes two to tango, right? And so when, you know, we can acknowledge that, and then when we look at these patterns, and where these patterns sort of stem from is what I'll talk about in another live stream, because I do want to explain it in a better way. So let me just write it down. The lashing out live stream. No, it's not. It's kind of that. It's a, I want to say it's a bit of where it stems from, or the core patterning, definitely. And it's been a really big shift for me to understand that. So I will do that. So keep an eye out for that in the next couple of days. But, you know, when we can recognize that, right? I'm guilty of lashing out and hurt when I'm feeling abandoned, right? Like, awesome awareness, right? And then it's like changing the patterns of understanding that. And yeah, so I will do another live stream about that. And so I'll just leave you with this, right? For this moment, when we're guilty of lashing out, you have to remember that you're in this hard outer protection wall, right? That we've been talking about on this live stream. So when you lash out, what's actually happening is, it's as my mentor, like Lois, a couple of years ago called it, it's a ping pong of energy. So if you imagine an outer masculine hard wall of protection, right? Many of us have them. The whole world's walking around with them, right? Most of them, maybe 99%, right? There's a hard wall, yeah? Hard wall of this protection. And that hard wall, right, as I always describe the masculine and feminine, the masculine is like akin to a house. It's the hard solid walls. These are not very solid walls, but in this Queenslander. But it's the masculine is the hard outer structure, the protector, and the feminine is the warm, loving, nurturing, the movement inside the house, right? This is the feminine, yeah? This is the protector, yeah? The roof, etc. So when we look at that, it's a hard wall, right? Things bounce off it. So when you're, you know, whatever's triggered you, you're gonna bounce. That's the reaction. That's the guilty of lashing out. And when the abandonment kicks in, or you know that it's because you're feeling abandoned or hurt, or how dare you say that to me, you have to remember that disconnect here. And it's like, wow, how have I abandoned myself? How have I not listened to my intuition and buried her because I want this relationship, but actually it's not the right one for me, but I'm gonna stay here and fight it. Right? Because there's some sort of connection there, and this connection and the patterns and the brain chemistry that has attracted you there in the first place is what I'm going to talk about in part 3, because it's a sense in itself. And And yeah, I really want to share that. I've been talking about it with clients all this week actually, so it's obviously time to come out and share as well. So I will do that. Keep an eye out for it. I want to keep talking, but I need to get on this call with my client now. Yeah, because I want to keep talking. I could keep talking. All right, got to do this client. So Terry says, I'm understanding completely, but it's a lot to remember. So if you like listen to these live streams over and over again, it will sink in. You know, and the first time we're learning something, we're just like, wow. And you have to remember you're energetically receiving it as well. You're energetically receiving it. Your system is starting to rewire because you're just like, wow, this makes total sense. You know, like you have to remember that the empath stuff, you absorb it anyway. You know, we know that we feel people's stuff and whatever. So even when you're learning something, remember that too. Or if you could get confused or you're like, oh, I don't understand what she's saying, it's over my head, like whatever, what the fuck she's talking about, she's an idiot, right? You close off to it, like, I'm not interested in that. Right? But if you know that you're an empath, and even if you don't understand what they're saying or you feel overwhelmed, like if you're like, because what I say, like, I'm learning this crypto stuff at the moment in this course, and it's like some of it's way over my head, but I'm like so conscious, I'm like, wow, he just lost me, but I'm absorbing it and my energy is absorbing it. I'm understanding it because we're empaths, we're intuitives, and if we keep listening, right, all of a sudden, and we know we've been absorbing it, all of a sudden it'll be like, wow, I get it now. I understand it now. There's always more to learn, but yeah, so just to keep that in mind as well. Yes, exactly, Jessica. So she says, I've done so much work on myself. I rarely get triggered anymore, but when I do, I realize and fix it quick. And that's the thing that, you know, when we do the work and we do this deep healing work, and by the way, this is all the stuff we go into in Trust the Intuition very deeply, all the tools to help you pull yourself out, blah, 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 blah. You know, when you commit to a personal healing journey, a spiritual development journey, a personal development journey, you know, and if you feel called to share this with others or not, you know, like it gets quicker, you know, like I said, like, you know, I wouldn't be feeling this good mentally, physically, everything, or maybe, I don't know about physically, maybe, I guess, but even mentally, right? If I didn't give myself December to cry and howl and drop into surrender and admit that I don't want to be strong anymore, it dissolved things and something shifted. And there's something else I was going to share about that, but I will write it down. So lashing out, because there's another piece to the puzzle of what I was just sharing about why it shifted like that too. So I'll just put it here so I remember to put it in part 3. How interesting. A 3-part series. Okay. Is healing the inner child a course? So we definitely do that in Trust Intuition. It is a tiny snippet because there's so much we cover in Trust Intuition, and it is a definite important part. On my website under the audio meditation, so if you go to realityawareness.com and then if you scroll down, there's a part where you know, there's the audio meditations. You can purchase the inner child meditation itself. It's $15. There's 4 or 5 training videos in there. Make sure you watch them. I explain all the ins and outs, how you do it, how you can do it on your own. If you can't work with me, or if you're not ready for Trust Intuition, you can start working through that. And as I always say, if someone ever asks me, right, if there was just one meditation I would use for the rest of my life, what would it be? Straight out, no thoughts about it, inner child. Because as we've discovered on this call and everything I usually talk about, it always stems back from childhood. Sure, there's past lives and stuff, but one of the biggest things, childhood. Yeah. All right, guys, I got to jump off this call. Trust Intuition starts in 22nd of the 2nd, 2022, next month. The link is in the title of this comments. You'll see it on my page. Send me a message if you've got any questions about it, or you can book in a call with Michael or another team member, and we can go into details about it all with you. I shall see you very soon. Thanks for being here, keeping it real as always. I love you guys.